All right. I'm here with Nellie Akalp, and she is the founder and CEO of CorpNet. How you doing, Nellie?
Hi, Steve. How are you?
Doing great. Doing great. I'm really excited to kind of unpack the story behind CorpNet, but also just before we get started, let's talk about your background, how you got here.
Wow, that's a long time ago. I started in the industry back in 1997. My husband and I were just graduating law school back then, and he was actually getting a D in his corporations class. And we were both kind of struggling. How are we going to pay all these student loans? How are we going to start a life together? How are we going to start a family? And in his corporations class, his teacher was like, there's two hot topics. It's either going with Enron or, starting an online business because it was at the birth of the internet. So he comes home, he's like, I have this great idea. Why don't we use our legal knowledge and streamline the process and start offering online filing services when it comes to starting a business, whether it's incorporating, setting up as an LLC, or keeping that business in compliance. Let's offer all of these services online and streamline it for the end user. And I said, that's a great idea. Where do we start? And he's like, well, I kind of need $100 from you because he wasn't working back then. And I said, okay. So literally, back then, there was Earthlink, and we literally had to like take $100 check to the owner, and we purchased a domain name, started in our two-bedroom apartment, and soon thereafter, I'm getting literally phone calls on my answering machine. I want to incorporate, I want to give you a credit card number. So, fast forward, the business was making money, and we soon were able to use the funds to pay off some of our debt, move into a house, set up shop in the basement of our house, and then move to an actual office. And fast forward to 2005, we were approached, and we were acquired by a publicly traded company. And it was the biggest blessing because I was truly a multimillionaire at the age of 31. And so that's how it all began. How do we take a problem, streamline it, and make it so that everyone can benefit from it and be able to save the money, and not give it to an attorney to set up a corporation or an LLC,
Mhm.
and save it and really use that money when they need legal advice. And that's when this whole concept of online incorporation services really came to life. And then
Nice.
2005, we were acquired by Intuit, and it's all over, so I can share. It was really nice, but also it was like giving up my baby. And
Mhm.
we were under a 3-year non-compete, and you know, the company kind of lost its entrepreneurial spirit after it was acquired. So we decided to step away, take our time under our non compete. And then soon thereafter, we realized that it wasn't the right fit for us to take on an early retirement. So kind of looked around the industry, we kind of looked around the landscape, weren't really excited about how the industry was, offering the services after we came out of it. And I was literally bored and crawling out of my skin. So in 2009, that's when CorpNet was born. We decided, you know what? Um, there's plenty of business to go around for everyone. This is what we know best. We're passionate about it. So let's, we know how to do it. Let's start all over again. So we started with CorpNet in 2009. It's a very similar concept. Started it out of my garage, and it was really different. The landscape was really different because in 2009 it was the height of the recession, so we were struggling to even gain an ounce of market share. So, we had these big egos that, well, we've done it before, we can do it again. But it really, really, CorpNet has been the biggest blessing for me and also the biggest challenge. And
Mm,
I feel like my entrepreneurship was really tested with our current company, CorpNet, and whether I really have the guts, the energy, and the effort to put into stomaching all the highs and lows with a company. And I think that's when you really get to put your entrepreneurial spirit to test.
yeah,
And so, I'm
nice.
proud to say we're here, and CorpNet has been the biggest blessing, and the company is doing really well. And yeah.
Very cool. So the company starts 2009, struggles a little bit to get initial traction,
There's a lot.
struggles a lot. And
Yeah.
I'd love to unpack that a little bit. Like how was the trajectory here? Because I know CorpNet today. I know a lot of people listening know CorpNet.
Nice.
What was the kind of the arc? Did it take, 5 years or so to start, bringing on a certain amount of employees? What did that look like over the
That's a
last?
great question. So, um, I would say from 2009 till about 2013, we were really struggling. Like, what are we missing? What are we doing wrong? And then in 2013, I mean, we wouldn't stop. The beauty about entrepreneurship, and for me specifically, is I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try anything I can to make it work. So it was November, December, and we were doing it all. We were doing trade shows, we were doing networking, we were doing all different types of marketing. And one of the things that we would do, and we still do, is our customers are number one, and we're always collaborating with them, always keeping in contact with them. And one of those elements of staying in contact with them is obviously during the holidays. So we did a whole list of, okay, for our clients and who we're going to send, holiday gifts to. And we realized that the majority of our clientele were B2B businesses, and the majority of them were accountants and consultants and lawyers. And we're like, huh, we're actually, we have a solid business here, and we have a solid formula to really pivot and really change our business model going after the B2B market instead of B2C. Now, keep in mind, we service everyone. I mean, our storefront is our website, and anyone can come in and place an order. But specifically, the big aha moment for us was at the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, where we realized that the majority of our client are B2B clients. So
Hmm,
what we decided to do after, discovering that was, why don't we create a program whereby we're streamlining the process for accountants, financial consultants, lawyers, anyone who's representing a client? And that's when our partner program was born. And the beauty of this program was we are now reselling the services to the B2B market, where they can put their branding on it and sell it as their own service. And that's when our business skyrocketed. That was the first big skyrocket. The next big skyrocket was when we realized that, well, it happened during COVID. So COVID happened, and, everybody looks at COVID in such a negative way. But for me, and with anything that happens, I always look at, what is the message here? What is the silver lining, behind all of this, And for us with COVID, it was unfortunate that a lot of companies went belly up, but maybe that was a good thing for them. And now they realize that. But a lot of companies also went remote, or they went into a hybrid model. And when those companies went remote, what happened is they were having access to wanting to hire employees remotely. So we, as part of our services, were also selling as a compliance service our payroll tax registration and sales tax registration services. And at that time, on the heels of COVID, we started seeing a huge bump in our payroll tax registration services because a lot of companies were coming to us and wanting us to register their payroll accounts in multiple states. So what happened was, one of our partners was using our services for payroll tax registration, and they're like, we use a payroll provider, and they would really benefit from using your services for all of their clients. And that's when we went from 15 employees to 200 employees. And the business just took on a different mode. And really, right now, where we stand is because of streamlining the payroll tax registration and the tax registration compliance components of starting a business, our company has become one of the nation's leaders when it comes to, you know, business incorporation and payroll and tax compliance in all 50 states.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard of CorpNet. I didn't know that there was so much of the kind of value chain that you guys have proceeded to take on. I really like that the partnering with B2B companies where they can almost white label in a way is
Yes.
a very smart kind of network effect that happened.
Well, in
And
essence, I mean, we were already doing it for the
yeah.
B2B members of our company. And then that's when we decided to create what is called now our CorpNet Partner Program.
Hmm.
And CorpNet's Partner Program is really designed to fit the needs of the end user, albeit it be an accountant, a CPA, a lawyer, or simply a tax advisor, enrolled agent, anyone who's representing clients. And what um, these professionals can do is they're able to add a completely new suite of services to their already existing services and become a one-stop shop to their clients. They can do this by either partnering with us as a white label reseller, where we sell our services to them fixed wholesale prices. They get to put their branding, their name, everything on it, sell it at an upcharge to their clients.
Hmm.
Alternatively, let's say that, the professional doesn't want to be the middleman and they just want to refer their clients to go to a trusted resource. They can partner with us as a referral partner, as an affiliate partner.
Hmm.
In this setup, they basically have a dedicated account manager that's dedicated to them, and they can basically send the client to us, having the peace of mind that the account manager is going to service their clients, is not going to poach their clients, is not going to upsell them a million different services and subscriptions and then bring them right back to the professional.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the program is very, very flexible. It's designed to meet the professional's needs. So the professional maybe wants to do wholesale with some of their clients, but yet with other clients, they may want to just refer them. They could do a mix and match. So our
Hmm.
programs are designed so that it fits the end user's needs. And then for our bigger, larger partners, those strategic partners, we also have API, where they can plug in and just plug into our backend.
Cool. Very cool. And I think one thing that I'd like to touch on is the scaling from 15 people to 200. When it comes to being prepared for something like that, what
You're
can
never prepared.
yeah.
You're never prepared.
Yeah. Yeah.
Funny
It's
you say
that's a
that.
quick that's a
Yeah.
quick one. And what was the time frame and how many employees do you guys have today, by the way?
Well, current right now, I would say we have about 125, and not because, of anything with lack of growth, but it's more because of the fact that we're a tech company, and we're constantly trying to automate and streamline processes. So
Hmm.
back then when we had to hire these 200 employees, it was because nothing was automated, and we wanted to put the service out, get the manpower to provide the services. But then as time went by, we automated a bunch of stuff. So
Yeah.
now because the reason why our employee count is much lower is because a lot of our services have now become automated, and we simply don't need that much
Yeah.
human labor.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And when it comes to kind of the timing, and we kind of briefly touched on selling to Intuit,
Mhm.
but why was it the right time? I guess when did they approach you? How back when the company before CorpNet?
So just so that there is no confusion here. So my first company, the name of it was MyCorporation.com.
Uh-huh.
And that was the company that Intuit acquired back
Yeah.
in 2005.
Mm-hmm.
And I no longer have any affiliations with my corporation. And we sold in 2005. I took my non compete, and the company today, I believe, is owned by Deluxe Corporation.
Okay.
But in answer to your question, we never had a plan to sell my corporation. There was no exit plan in place. In fact, when they approached us, it was simply under the guise of a business development call. And back then, in my first company, I was head of business development, and my husband forwarded the message and goes, "Oh, there's a business development call." And I talked to them, and soon thereafter, the conversations turned from one of a partnership to, "Hey, we want to buy your company,
Yeah.
and are you willing to sell?" And when you're in love with what you do every day, there is no price to put on it, and that's kind of where I was.
Yeah.
But we never really had a plan, and they were in a position where they wanted to get into the incorporation space, and they were looking at us and another company, and they approached us. We felt the deal was super solid, and we thought the timing was really good. And back then I had just had twins, and I had twins that were 2.5 year old, and I had just had a baby. So the timing for me was perfect from that sense, because this allowed me to focus on my then growing children
Mm-hmm.
and take some time off. And it also gave me the realization that I wasn't really ready to take on an early retirement. And I really loved what I did. So that's why I got back into it in
Nice.
2009 and decided to start CorpNet with my husband.
Nice. And when it came to like negotiations and just in general, would love to get your advice for people listening who are talking about potentially selling their business and the valuation. How how did you guys approach it when it came to negotiation?
Well, that's a great question. So, with larger companies like Intuit, and the likes, I mean, there is really not a lot of room for negotiation. And back then, we were in a position where, I would say we had a number in mind, but it was really based on our EBITDA and what they were willing to pay, and what multiple they were willing to pay us based on our EBITDA. And we were lucky because back then, and for any company, normally the multiples vary from 5 to 10 times EBITDA. And we were very lucky enough that they paid us a 20 multiple times EBITDA. And the reason why I feel is because the company was really clean. It was only my husband and I. We had no debt, we had no investors, and um, there was no affiliations with any other persons other than it was just my husband and I.
Hmm.
And I believe that was really, really, really um it was something that Intuit really felt comfortable with, and they looked at us at that portion of it as super, super a huge plus. And that's the reason they acquired us, because it was a clean purchase, and they Intuit wouldn't have any type of long-standing relationships or having to clean it up. The company was super clean. There was no, lawsuits against us. There was no long-standing debt. I mean, literally, when they would ask us, like, what do you have investors? Do you owe money? And I'm like, no. And so when they offered us the amount they offered us, um, back then, my husband and I were 30 years old, and that was a lot of money. So
Mhm.
I'm sure I could have negotiated for a little bit more money, but I was like, wow, this is gonna not only last for this lifetime, but the next lifetime.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, it I was at that point where there wasn't a lot of room for negotiation. And if there was, I probably wouldn't have been very successful getting more, because they were already paying us a 20 multiple.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's where we ended. And did I learn a lot from the process? Absolutely. Would I do it the same way I did? Yeah, no, absolutely not. Yeah, so there's a lot of lessons that I've learned, that really I feel have made me into a stronger human, when it comes to if I ever want to sell my company again.
Mhm. Nice. And I think a 20x multiple, especially now in the current market, is kind of unheard of. And I
Yeah.
think that it's a testament to, the team being just the two of you, super lean, and the idea that there's no debt, it's profitable, and you guys are basically crushing it to the point where it was transferable. I think that's something that a lot of people don't really realize is the transferability of
Hmm.
these things, of businesses,
Hmm.
is the main part of evaluation. Is like, all right, can we take this
Yeah,
and move
exactly.
it over?
Yeah.
And I think that that's really where that 20x comes from, is what you guys built. So that's really, really cool. So that kind of takes us to the finale of knowing what you know now. What would you tell Nellie 10 years ago?
So I would say the biggest lesson that I've learned is boundaries. Boundaries are the most important thing that as a human you have to have, especially in business, in my opinion, because boundaries, in my opinion, not only protect you, but they protect others as well. And in my, for me, the lesson here is that, I'm a very nice person. I'm very, very, I give the benefit of doubt to most people. And because of my lack of boundaries, I think a lot of, I used to get hurt a lot, where the other person was basically doing what they always do. It was just because of my lack of boundaries and my lack of, really looking at it as, this is a transactional friendship. It's not a relationship. It's a transactional based, kind of association. And oftentimes I would mix it. And then at the end, I would find myself really upset. Whereas today, this actually happened to me a couple of days ago where, I have an employee, we've had a long standing relationship, where she's been with us for a very long time. And, she made a request. And, you know, because of our long standing relationship, she has access to me. Whereas, many of our other employees, because they're newer, they don't. But, you know, because I now have boundaries, I'm the one who has to direct the relationship so that, it's not only I'm protected, but also our company is protected. And, when, you know, those boundaries come into play, they're not supposed to be comfortable. And most people find it very awkward and discomfortable, uncomfortable. So what happens is, I'm approached with, but what have I done? Why are you upset? And this goes for anybody, who I've had longstanding relationship with. And, I'm the one who has to come back and be like, no, this is nothing personal. I'm running a business. I'm your employer above and beyond. And these boundaries are in place to not only protect you, but also me.
Mhm.
And these are the things that, had I known 20 years ago, I would have been in a better place. But you learn, and the only way you learn is by, you know, either failing or getting hurt, whatever it is. But I think, especially in business, boundaries are really important, because again, they not only protect you as a human, but as the employer, as the business owner, but you're also protecting whoever you're working with too. So that's the biggest lesson for me that I've learned in all these past years, and because of those boundaries today, I'm able to expect more from the people who work with me, and they're more accountable. I get to be more accountable to them, and at the end of the day, the business is run much more fluid, and there are no gray areas, and we don't have to sit here and really deal with the elephant in the room. It's like, hey, these were my expectations, they weren't done, what are we going to do about it? And it all I could say is it makes life a lot easier, and it it you really get to um see which people you want as part of your team and which you don't want.
Mm. That was fantastic. That's one of the best I've heard. Boundaries
Yeah.
boundaries is one of the best ones that I've heard of
Thank you.
learning over the years. And I guess the a bonus question, as a segue from that, would be, what do you do with a cognitive load as the CEO? A lot of people don't really understand the pressures
Mm,
from across the board. It's
mm,
a lot.
yeah.
Having been in that seat multiple times, I know the pressure as well. But what do you do to remain calm? What do you do to kind of be at peace and calm yourself?
I appreciate that. Um, so meditation is really important to me. I meditate every single day. And a lot of people look at meditation like you got to sit in a certain way, and just like, meditation is just being quiet, like just literally quieting your mind. You can do it anywhere, any time of the day, and just breathing and listening to your breaths. So, meditation and breathing is super important for me because it really regulates me.
Hmm.
The other thing for me is I like doing mindless work sometimes, because most of my time is based on thinking, crunching numbers, or e- educating or running a team. So for me, the way I try to quiet my mind and calm myself after a really long day is spending time with my family, watching a movie, doing something mindless like, cleaning the house, folding laundry. Those are all things that I enjoy as a human, or just taking a walk out in nature, playing with my dogs. It's really important to have work life balance in that sense. And I'll say this too, is for any of you guys listening who are a husband and wife team, it's even more important because for me, I work with my husband. So it's really important that we separate business and we don't bring it into our marriage and our family. So, we try to keep it fun, we try to keep it light. Um, there's where my boundaries come in. Oftentimes he'll walk in and he'll be like, hey, what about that? And I'll go, like, I'm off now, and let's keep it fun. Like, let's keep it light. We do date nights, we'll go to concerts. So it's really about balancing because it otherwise you'll go insane, and that's
Hmm.
happened to me before where I've literally been in a position where, it for me, the stress shows up in my body as pain. And when I have a lot of pain, whether it's knee pain, joint pains, I'm not younger, I'm almost 54. That's when I know, wait a minute, I need to take some time off and just reset.
Hmm. Well said. Well said. Well, where can people learn more about what you're working on?
So, for those of you interested to learning more about CorpNet, you can visit us at www.corpnet.com. If you're interested in partnering with us, you can go to www.corpnet.com/partners, or you can just access it through the homepage of the website. I'm all over social media. You can find me at Nellie Akalp. And for those of you interested in sending us an email, go to info@corpnet.com or simply pick up the phone and dial 1-888-449-2638.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify, the links that Nellie mentioned will be in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing your
Well,
story.
it's been a pleasure, Steve. Thank you so much for the opportunity.